up in a little brick house in Dorchester, right in the heart of Boston. My grandma Betty lived with us. She was always a bit eccentric, but she was my grandma, you know. She loved her old black and white movies, her garden, and her cat Mr. Fluffernutter. Everything changed when I was about 12. She started acting off. At first it was just little things. She'd forget where she put her keys, or what day it was. We chalked it up to old age, but then it got worse. She started talking to herself, mumbling things under her breath. We thought maybe she was lonely. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke up to her screaming. It was a blood-curdling scream, the kind that sticks with you forever. I found her in the kitchen standing over the stove, a look in her eyes I'll never forget. Her eyes were black, like empty pits. She was chanting something in a language I didn't recognize, her voice a guttural growl. We called an ambulance. They diagnosed her with schizophrenia, but something about it didn't feel right. It was like a switch had been flipped. The woman I knew was gone, replaced by this thing. She started having these episodes. She'd talk about demons, about a darkness inside her. She'd scratch at herself, leaving deep red marks. There were times when she displayed superhuman strength, overpowering two grown men. It was like watching a horror movie, except it was happening in my own home. We tried everything. Doctors, priests, even psychics. Nothing worked. It was like she was possessed or something. I started seeing things too. Shadows moving on their own, cold spots in the house, and a sense of dread that was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. I'd hear her whispering at night, things that chilled me to the bone. She'd talk about a master, about a dark pact. I tried to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't happening, but the fear was consuming me. One night, I woke to find her standing over my bed. Her eyes were like glowing, and there was a sinister smile on her face. When I say glowing, I don't mean literally glowing, but it still had that look to it, if that makes any sense. I remember she reached out, and I saw a flash of darkness before I blacked out. When I woke up, I was alone in my room. There was a strange symbol carved into my arm, a symbol I've never seen before, and I knew deep down that something evil had taken hold of my grandma. Then came the day my grandpa died. It was sudden, a heart attack. The house felt empty without him. Grandma seemed to withdraw even further into herself. She'd sit in her rocking chair for hours, just staring into space. Then it started. Every afternoon around the same time, she would start talking. Not to us, but to someone or something. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but I could hear the fear in it. And then I'd see it. A shadow. A dark, almost human-shaped void in the corner of the room. It would stay there for a few minutes, then disappear, as suddenly as it had happened. It went on for a week, this daily ritual of madness. Then, as abruptly as it had started, it stopped. Grandma was different after that. The fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by a vacant stare. It was like a shell of her former self. I don't even know what happened. Maybe it was just a symptom of her illness, a twisted manifestation of her mind's darkness. Or maybe, just maybe, there was something more sinister at play, something that had taken hold of her, and then for reasons unknown, let go. I still think about this sometimes, about the dark figure in the corner of the room, about the fear in my grandma's eyes. It's a story that haunts me, a reminder that there are things in this world that we can't explain, things that defy logic and reason. And that's the thing about it, you know. The scariest stories aren't the ones with ghosts and ghouls. They're the ones that happen right in your own backyard. The ones that make you question your own sanity. I've been working the graveyard shift at Penn Station for what feels like a lifetime now. It's a place where time seems to stand still, or maybe even reverse. It's a place where shadows dance and whispers echo, A place where the lines between the living and the dead blurs. At first it was just an odd creak, a door slamming shut when there's no draft. Then it escalated. Objects moved. Cold spots appeared, and an eerie silence would settle over the station, broken only by the distant rumble of a train. I started seeing shadows, long distorted figures that moved on their own. They'd flicker in the dim light, taking on grotesque shapes. It was like watching a silent horror movie, except this was real life, and I was the unwilling star. Then there were the sounds. Whispers, moans, and the occasional blood-curdling scream. They'd echo through the empty station, sending shivers down my spine. I've started carrying a voice recorder, hoping to capture these sounds, but so far it's just been white noise and the echo of my own paranoia. One night, I saw something that changed everything. A woman dressed in the style of the early 1900s was walking through the crowd, not around them, but through them. She was a ghost, plain and simple. Her face was obscured by the collar of her coat, but her eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a haunting sorrow. There's this one specific spot in the station, a forgotten platform, way down to the end of the tunnel. It's like a black hole sucking me in. I've always felt a strange pull towards it. There's a sense of finality about it, like I'll find the answers there, or maybe, just maybe, an escape. I've started to see patterns. The apparitions seem to be drawn to the older parts of the station, the areas with the deepest history, and there's a sense of urgency to their movements, like they're searching for something or someone. The other night, I had the most terrifying experience. I was cleaning the old waiting room when I heard a child's laughter. It was clear as day. I found a small worn-out rubber ball rolling across the floor, but no child. Then I saw her, a little girl translucent, playing with an imaginary friend. I've started having these dreams, or nightmares. I don't know which. I'm there in the station, but it's different, darker and more sinister. The shadows are alive, reaching out for me. And then there's this woman, the one in the vintage coat, but she's different, more menacing. Her eyes burn with an otherworldly intensity. I'm starting to think I'm losing my mind, man. I'm jumping and paranoid. Every shadow looks like a person. Every noise looks like a footstep. I'm starting to think I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm trapped in a nightmare, and there's no way out. There's something else, something I haven't told anyone. I've started seeing shadows moving on their own, even during the day. They're not just figments of my imagination. I've caught them on camera. Dark, shifting shapes that seem to have a life of their own. And then there are the dreams, nightmares that bleed into reality. I wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, with the feeling that something evil is watching me. I'm losing my grip, man. I can feel it. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know one thing is for sure. I'm not coming out of this unscathed. I'll keep you posted. I'm a big history buff, especially when it comes to the Kennedy era. So when I got a gig as a night watchman at an old Hollywood studio, I was stoked. The place was steeped in history, and I'd figure I'd be spending my nights surrounded by movie magic. Yeah, not so much. The studio was huge. A labyrinth of sound stages, offices, and old sets. Most of it was dark and deserted, with only the occasional security light cutting through the gloom. I'd been working there for a few weeks, and everything had been pretty quiet. Then one night, it happened. I was doing my rounds, checking in on the various buildings. As I passed through one of the older sound stages, I saw it. A figure standing in the middle of the vast empty space. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light, or maybe one of the studio cats. But as I got closer, I realized it was a man. He was tall and slender, with a distinctive profile. He was wearing a suit, and there was an aura of authority about him. It was then that it hit me. It was John F. Kennedy. But why? I mean, I understand it to an extent. Like I said, I was a history buff, but he wasn't related to movies. Anyway, I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. He turned and looked at me. His eyes were piercing blue, and there was a sadness in them that was almost palatable. He just stood there looking at me for what felt like an eternity. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he was gone. One moment he was there, and the next he was just gone. I stood there stunned for what felt like hours. I've told a few people about it, but most of them just think I'm crazy. I mean, who's gonna believe you when you saw a ghost of a former president? But I know what I saw. It was like looking into a window into the past. A glimpse of a man frozen in time. It's been a long time since that night, and I moved on from that job. But I still think about it often. It's like a piece of history that has somehow seeped into the present, leaving an indelible mark on my life. But then things changed. One night as I was making my rounds, I came upon him again. But this time, there was something that was different. A cold dread washed over me as my eyes adjusted to the dim light. Half his head was empty. I mean, half his head was simply missing. It wasn't a clean cut, like a surgical incision. It was raw and jagged, as if a monstrous force had torn through him. It was horrifying and inhuman. His eyes, what was left of them, were hollow, black pits that seemed to draw me in. There was no blood, no physical evidence of such a horrific injury, just a gaping hole where his skull should have been. The rest of him seemed almost ethereal, hands loosened, as if fading into the background, yet that missing half of his head was solid, tangible in its horror. This was a sight that burned itself into my retinas, a tormenting image that wasn't fading. From that night forward, the man that haunted the studio was no longer a melancholic ghost, but a grotesque phantom, a terrifying specter of nation's tragedy. I've never been the same since. The studio, once a place of dreams and magic, is now a haunted house in my mind. The image of JFK, that face, a grotesque mask of horror, is a constant companion. Sleep is a luxury I can rarely afford, filled as it is, with nightmares of that spectral figure. Some nights I can almost feel his presence, a cold, chilling breath on the back of my neck, and in those moments, I'm transported back to that soundstage, face to face with a horror beyond comprehension. I don't know what I saw, or why I was shown such a grotesque spectacle, but one thing is for certain. The ghost of JFK, or whatever it is a force of pure terror, and I'm a prisoner in its haunting world. You want to hear something crazy? I spent a night in the Villisca Axe murder house. I'm not exactly a daredevil or anything, but I was with the paranormal investigation team, and well, curiosity got the better of me. I've seen a lot of haunted places, old asylums, supposedly cursed hotels, the whole 9 yards. But this place, this was different. It's like the house itself is holding its breath waiting. We got in there at dusk. The place is creepy even in the daylight, but at night, it's something else. It's like the house is alive, watching you. We set up our gear, cameras, recorders, the works. Just standard procedure, but the atmosphere was thick, almost tangible. You could feel the weight of history hanging in the air, heavy and oppressive. We started in the kids' room. It was like walking to the time capsule of tragedy. The beds were still there, tiny and untouched. It was like the ghosts of the children were still there playing and laughing, unaware of their fates. We heard whispers, faint at first, then clearer. Children's laughter, but it was a hollow, empty sound, like a recording played on repeat. Then there was the kitchen. That's where it got really weird. The temperature dropped like a stone. We were wearing jackets in the middle of summer, and then the smell. It was sweet, almost like blood. I know that sounds crazy, but it was there. A metallic tang that made your skin crawl. We split up to cover more ground. I ended up in the parents' room. The air was thick with something. A presence. I felt like I was being watched. It was like eyes were boring into the back of my head. Then I heard it. A low guttural moan. It came from the closet. I froze. My heart was pounding. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then a cold breath washed over me. I could feel something brushing against my skin, like icy fingers tracing my face. I snapped a picture. Nothing on camera, of course. But I know what I felt. I know what I saw. I saw a shadow move in the corner of my eye. It was human-shaped, but distorted and elongated. And the eyes, black, empty pits. After that, I couldn't focus. My heart was racing and my palms were sweaty. We decided to call it a night. As we were leaving, I looked back at the house. It seemed to be watching us, a malevolent grin etched into its dark facade. I haven't been able to shake the feeling since. Nightmares haunt me. The house a recurring character. Its dark secrets slowly unraveling in my sleep. And sometimes when I'm alone, I swear I can hear those whispers again. Those children's laughter, echoing through the silence. I've been to my fair share of haunted places, but Penhurst, that place is different. It's like the building itself is a living, breathing entity, full of malice. We got there by night, and the place was already giving me the creeps. The air was thick, heavy with a sense of despair, like a physical weight pressing down on you. We started in the ward with the children, and you imagine, kids locked up treated like animals. The energy in that place was suffocating. It felt like 1,000 tiny eyes were watching you and judging you. We heard whispers, like little voices calling out in the darkness. I swear I saw shadows move out of the corner of my eye, in shapes that shouldn't have been there. Then we moved on to the hydrotherapy room. That's where it got really messed up. The air was cold and damp, and there was this constant dripping sound, like water torture. I felt something watching me, a presence so cold it made my skin crawl. It was like being in an icebox with a ghost. We split up to cover more ground. I ended up in the isolation ward, a single cell, bare walls, and a heavy metal door. It was like a tomb. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt a surge of panic. My heart was pounding and my breath was short. It was like the walls were closing in on me. I could feel eyes on me, burning into my soul. Then I heard it. It was a woman's scream, raw and filled with terror. It echoed through the empty halls, sending shivers down my spine. It was like a scream that seemed to come from the very depths of hell. I wanted to run, but my legs were like jelly. I stumbled backward, tripping over something. When I looked down, I saw a handprint, clear as day, imprinted in the dust. It was like a macabre signature, a chilling reminder of the horrors that had been taking place in the walls. I remember snapping a few pictures, but nothing came out. It was like the place was blocking us and protecting its secrets. We left as soon as we could, but I haven't been the same since. Nightmares haunt me. The asylum and recurring character. Its dark corridors filled with shadowy figures. I see her face in my dreams. The woman who screamed. And sometimes when I'm alone, I swear I could hear her again. Her cries echoing in the silence. I've tried to move on and to forget it, but it's like a part of me is still trapped there. The asylum is a place of darkness, a vortex of despair, and I feel I'll never truly escape its grasp. The morgue I was at was this old stone building on the edge of town, the kind of place that makes the hair on your back of your neck stand up just looking at it. It was dark and cold, and smelled like, well, you can imagine. There was a heavy, oppressive atmosphere about the place, like it was holding its breath. We started in the prep room. That's where they, got the bodies ready. It was eerie as heck. The stainless steel tables, cold and impersonal, seemed to loom in the dim light. We set up our equipment, and I tried to ignore the feeling of being watched. It was like every shadow held a secret, waiting to be revealed. We started getting some hits on the EVP recorder. Nothing crazy at first, just static and white noise. But then one clip stood out. It was a woman's voice, and it was soft and clear. It said, "Help me." I froze. My heart was pounding in my ears. I played it back, and there it was again. "Help me." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I knew that voice. It was my grandma. She'd passed away a few years back, and the voice was unmistakably hers. I was in shock. I didn't believe in ghosts or anything, but hearing my grandma's voice, that was a whole different level of messed up. It was like a door had opened into a world I didn't want to visit. We decided to move on to the morgue itself. As we walked down to the cold, sterile hallway, I felt a presence behind me. It was a heavy, suffocating feeling, like someone was breathing down my neck. I turned around, and there, at the end of the hall, was a shadow, a human-shaped shadow, and it looked just like my grandma. I screamed. The team rushed to me, and I pointed at the shadow, but when they looked, it was gone. It was like the place was taunting me, showing me something, and then snatching it away. We tried to continue, but the atmosphere was too thick. We packed up our gear and left as quickly as we could, but the experience still haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Nightmares consumed me, filled with shadows and whispers. I sought professional help and tried to explain what I was going through. How do you explain hearing your dead grandmother's voice or seeing your shadow in a haunted morgue? People looked at me like I was crazy. To this day, I don't know what to believe. Was it a trick of the mind? A hallucination? Or was it something more? Was it something truly terrifying? Whatever it was, it changed me forever. I'm not the same person I was before I walked into that morgue, and part of me wonders if I ever will be again. The worst part is, I can't even escape it. I see shadows everywhere now. I hear whispers in the wind, and I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting to see her. The morgue has become a part of me, a dark, twisted part that I can't seem to shake. I've tried to move on, to find peace, but it's like the morgue has a hold on me. It's a place of darkness, a place of fear, and I'm trapped inside it, a prisoner of my own mind. This is the "This is why I'm cool" video. Why do I refer to it as the "This is why I'm cool" video? Because the short videos are the sample of what's to come. This is the big video, so it's the "This is why I'm cool" video. So if you got to the end of the video, right, this is why I'm cool. That way I know you got to the end of the video, you're enjoying the content, and you love it. Bye. See you in the next video.